There we go. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you guys are in the world. Good afternoon. It's a session of Revit Radio. I'm Brian. To my right, for once, is actually Desiree. I don't know where she virtually shows up. See, to my right is Desiree. Woo! This is Revit Radio, where you guys ask questions and we might have an answer for you. The answer could be, I don't know, but we always have an answer. And as usual, a few new names on here. If you do ask a question, feel free to put it in the question and answers pod, because hopefully we're getting heckled quite a bit in the Q&A pod. And those questions usually get lost between, all the horror of the whiteboard and single monitor talk. So with that said, I'm going to jump in and do a couple things while we're waiting for you guys to get in there and start asking some questions. First thing I did want to point out, for those of you naysayers who are always saying, "Ooh, I don't upgrade to the Revit version until there's an update, a point release," we now have a point release. So right before Labor Day, they came out with a point release. So we do have that out there. Do want to get in there and say, "Cool, there it is. You have it." I always also like to show, like, if you are big into the IFC, they literally came out yesterday with the new IFC updater for Revit 25. And they've also, which I was pretty surprised to see down here in one of these, that 2022 actually had a couple updates as well. So there was a hot fix for 2022, as well as the issues add in if you're using it for 2022. So a lot of different updates. Always make sure you are going into your manage.autodesk.com to start getting those updates. So just wanted to throw it out there. Biggest one was that there is a 25.1, so there's no longer an excuse on what you need to be doing before that. Oh, I did say Labor Day, didn't I? Memorial Day. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for correcting me on that. So with that said, this is something that came up last week with me and a particular client. So we're all used to just our tagging information, and this one came out with one of my clients. They were like, "Cool, they're switching from AutoCAD." I still can't believe I have clients actually transitioning from AutoCAD to Revit. I have 3 currently. I thought that was done. I thought everybody was in the Revit world, but I guess I just have been for so long I forget. So one of those things is if you actually select this tag, right? We're all used to having a tag. It'll give us the mark or it'll give us the type mark, right? But the things I always like to go in and start talking about in some of these is other things you can do in the tag information or other things that you can start getting in there. So if I were to come in here and grab this tag and come up here and look at the information and we go look at the label, right? For those of you who looked at tags, we can have like mark value, etc. The one thing I always wanted to like to point out is if you're grabbing something that's like a length or a number or an angle or something that's not just a text value, if you're like, "Cool, I didn't want to see the spaces in this," or "I want to change the accuracy," or whatever you want to do, if you are grabbing a tag that has this information, you can come down here and actually hit the format button. So if you're like, "Cool, I like that, but I didn't want to use fractional inches. I always wanted this just to be, feet and inches, or I want it to be meters. So even though it's a metric door, I could see it in meters, whatever." I can start coming down here and saying, "Cool, let's just see this in inches," rather than whatever the project settings might be, because I don't want it to see, 2'10". I want to see that's 34 inches. You can come down here and change it from the project settings to whatever you want that value to be, and it can be individual values. So literally I could come here and say, "Cool, I'm going to do fractional inches there. Then I'm going to add width over again. But then this time I'm going to format that width. And instead of just being fractional inches, maybe I wanted to do feet and fractional inches, right? Or I could do decimal feet or whatever I wanted to do inside of here." So you have the capability to change the formatting on those. So if I go ahead and load this back into my project, we'll say, "Cool, I think project 1 is what I was looking at." Right now I'm going to have this one. I think I grabbed the one that was mark. So let me switch that door tag out to be the mark door tag, not the type mark. And now you'll see it's got 36 inches or 3'0". So you do have the capability to change that. What this particular client actually wanted is they wanted to be able to go down and see the size, but they didn't want to see the size in 3 foot or 2'10". They wanted to say 3'0 by 7'0". Or if I were to come in here and yes, I'm going to do what I shouldn't do, and I'm on the out of box template. The 34, they wanted to see 210 by 6'8". Right. So this is how this particular client wanted this to look. So the way I accomplish that in this tag is not everybody also doesn't understand that you have the capability. I'm going to go switch my type. Love it when I get on Zoom and how quickly this goes. Why did all of a sudden Keynote manager jump. Wow, I really don't know what's going on right now. Come on, I'm in a family. Selection, keynote manager opened up. Okay, pull that back out here for a second. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I think I lost my properties. I probably just misclicked. So if I come down here and I grab this and I go to say, I was going to switch the type up here. If I come up here and switch this to be the one that's size. So the way I accomplish this is when you're looking at a label, you can go create this label. And one of the options you have to do in a label is to edit a formula or create a formula. So when you're doing a formula, like if I wanted to, I could say it's width divided by height or something like that when I start coming inside of here. But in this case, I actually went in and created a formula. And if I come down here and manipulate this formula, I basically wanted to convert the width value rounded into the foot value. So you see, I got one up here called value width. I should have called it value width feet. So basically I said, let's take the width and let's divide it by 1. So we're going to divide it by 1 inch. So it's going to take that 2'10" and divide it by 1 inch and give us that. And I want to round that down, and then I want to divide it by 12. So I'm taking the width, dividing it by 1 inch, then dividing that by 12, and then saying, hey, round it down. So if it's a 2'10" or a 3'10", it's going to tell me, hey, it's 2.5, 3.5, whatever that decimal is going to be, and I'm just going to round it down. So I was able to get the value width. And then the one for the inches, I did something similar where I said, hey, let's take the width divided by 1, and then let's subtract that width times 12, because I want to subtract the feet out of there. So I was able to do the math within the tag to get this to work. So again, if we go back to that project, now I'm going to come up here and say, hey, I literally have inside of here 2'10" by 6'8". All right, so this is how we can do it. So in those formulas, you're not limited to just the single values you have in there. You can start coming in and start getting into this. Yes, they do residential, multifamily. I noticed Roman said this, residential, multifamily, and all the other stuff. And I see Desiree posted, I was talking, and then she left the room. I like the way she posted it. It is my birthday. She posted her, and when somebody asked if I was getting AARP emails, I actually started getting AARP emails and mailers and the thing when I turned 30. So yes, I've been getting those for over 20 years, Tom. Thanks for that. AARP, they don't care. You can actually join AARP if you're 18 years old. I did not know that until I actually did join AARP, but yeah, so you can do this on the doors. The other thing is I always like to try to talk to people is, don't always be thinking about just the information they're giving you there, right? I personally have, nothing's going to show here. I'm going to go to my little, my template for my project. What I always like to end up having in my project for my door tags, I always have like a QA door tag. Thought I had someone, I thought I had one somewhere. I probably don't care. I'll just go tag this door. So when I come back here and start looking at that door tag, this door tag for me, I happen to have one that's called QA. And you'll see that if I zoom in, it's going to give me all of this additional information that I'm looking for, right? It's going to give me the fire rating. So if I come down to this door and be like, cool, I wanted this door to be, the fire rating was going to be a 30-minute door or whatever. As I type those values in there, this tag is going to represent that. So in my working views, I have tags for a whole lot of stuff, like my door tags, my windows tags, my wall tags, that I literally use in my own working view because I got tired of constantly having to select these things and then go look at their properties. And sometimes those might even be a type property. Like I believe I'm pulling the rough width out of this. So it's kind of like, oh, gee, what are we looking at for this? So I go through and I have all of those different values into that tag. So I'm not constantly having to come in and look at the properties and go into those things. So kind of a nice thing to start coming in and saying, hey, we're looking at this. And back in that original tag like this client was simply going to say, oh, well, we'll just type that in for every door. And I'm like, no, get out of that CAD mentality. I want to do it and extract it properly. Because we all know, we've all done this. Somebody's going to go grab this door and be like, oh, let me go edit type. Let me duplicate this. Let me call this, let me make this a 24-inch wide door, right? They're going to call it 24 by 80. And they're gonna be like, okay, it's like, we'll just use the name. Like, cool. So the door says 24, but it's not actually 24 inches. Or they maybe even duplicate the size, but they don't go to the description or the type mark or whatever that was gonna be. I don't like people trying to be liable. It's like, sure, here if we come in, we change it. We maybe don't even change the name. We just change the value. We're gonna actually see what's going on with that tag. So for me, it's always trying to come in, extract the data, try not to make it a value that somebody's going to just be typing in, etc. So completely whatever you need. And Trevor is saying he made a tag like this last week, but I used shared parameters to make it work. Now I can make it more efficient using formula function. Yeah. And that's kind of one of those things you get into. Again, for me, it's how can we extract that data, get into there. And I do a lot of this stuff as well. I do have some clients like for the tags. If I know there's going to be like the door families have what is the like I have for my doors, let me go back to my project. For my doors, I actually have like an exiting width factor, et cetera, inside of there. So my doors, that's what this 2'9.5" is probably on this door, is what is my clear space for code exiting. Right. So when we start looking at these stuff, what are you going to do inside of there? We can start having that information in there. So like code exiting with door, this gives this to me. I think I got to type in a door factor first before I can get in there. But as we start going through and setting this up, we can start pulling out all of that code information, again, either using formulas directly within the tag or extracting those data where we're trying to come in and get into there as well. So I'm going to pull up Desiree's computer to look at these questions. So I don't have to keep switching back and forth since she deserted me and she was supposed to be inside of here. Cool. So jump into some questions. Sounds like we have a few questions now. The Revit title block, the plot date. Is there a way to remove the time and only display the date? No, unfortunately. So for those of you who might know what's not being talked about on this, if I go to any sort of sheet over here, you can actually have the date and the time. And so I oftentimes get people going, I don't care about the date. I don't care about the time. I only want the date, or X, Y, whatever else you're talking about there. No, unfortunately, this is the only way Revit can pull out the date and time. And I always love it because as you click on it, it even gives you the seconds because you know that's so critical. And if you hover over it, a lot of times you'll see that it's the number here looks slightly different because it's not refreshing the view, but it is understanding that, hey, we're getting into hours, minutes, seconds. So no, you can't unfortunately go in and do that. But if we do pull this open, and I don't know if I've done this recently, edit family, come on. If I come down here and grab the date and we say edit that label and you click on here. No, I didn't think so. I was going to say, I was wondering if they've ever added a formula to this to change the formatting, but they haven't. So the date and time stamp, unfortunately, that is just one where you are stuck with what you get and there's nothing to be able to go through and do that. So sorry about that, Simon. I wish there was, but that is what it is.
Sorry.
That's okay. So she'll take it over and then she just up and leaves me. Welcome to married life.
Sorry, you rank lower than the boss. I disappeared. Now I'm visible.
Okay, so got that question done. So we'll get into Michael's question. What's Michael got for a question?
Families, consistent preview, images, add-ins, what you like, dislike, use, haven't used, but are interested in.
So for family previews, I personally only had one and they never updated it. And I really liked it. And I got to remember what it was called. The reason why I liked the one, and I've actually talked to Parley about this, but it was, what was it called? It was BIM. No, that would have been Publishers, BIM something. But the one I liked, they actually came in there and they had Revit version stamp on it. So when you would actually save it, it would say, hey, this was saved in Revit 2012, 2013, 14, whatever. They stopped upgrading it for 2024. They had it all the way up until 2023. I don't remember what that one was, but I really, really liked that one just because it literally installed and it was automatic. I think it was this one. I gotta remember what it was called. I can't remember, but there was one out there for that. If you really want to look into it, you have Pig. So preview image generator. Come on, search. You give me no searches for Pig. Preview image. There we go. Oh, it's P period I period. So they have a paid version and a free version. So if you really want to be like, hey, I want to go through here and have specific images of my content that I'm looking for, the preview image generator will do this. This is from the same creators who create Guardian. So it's Iconic BIM. If you look at them, the paid version, you can go batch do your entire library. You can say, hey, go to this view and go to a 3D type view, turn these things off, set the scale to be this, etc. So you have a lot more options in that image. I'm very OCD personally for me. So like when I go into my families, like in these families here, I'm going to go into the annotation categories and turn off dimensions, turn off reference planes, etc. before I go hit save, etc. That's kind of what I do. It's partially why I really like the one that I can't think of. I'd have to open up an old version of Revit and go in there because it literally date and time stamped it. And it would also do it for like your Windows previews, which I really, really liked. So if I go to like my old Revit, like 22 stuff, and I open up any of my families, and it would even do it for projects if you wanted it to. Sure, I'm not gonna find one that I actually did this on, right? Of course I said this. Let's go to 3D families. Sure, it's probably in my furniture. And of course, none of these actually have that on there. But what I did, if I went into whichever version it was, it would say down here Revit 23. So I really liked it that you were just looking at it. And the main reason why I liked it is if I saved it in the wrong version, I could be in like my 22 folder and it would be in here saying, hey, this was done in Revit 23, and they're all gone. So I probably opened these since I had that installed. I don't remember what it was, but I liked that one. I've talked to Parley over at Iconic BIM, who does Guardian and stuff, that I really loved the fact that it would just stamp it here. You could also put a company name, so you could stamp with your company name too. So I liked it for that reason, but I can't think of what it was. And it doesn't work for the latest versions anyway, so.
Funny. I've never even thought about using something like that. I just clean up my view and close it. And you have a thumbnail.
Yeah.
It's part of my maintenance.
Yeah, and the one I had, it didn't do any of that. It would like you had to go through and do it, and it just literally saved. But I loved it, and it would be funny because I'd go to clients' offices who were on like single user Revit files, as long as they weren't in the cloud. It would also I would also stamp those. So you'd be like, oh, this is a Revit 24 version saved by BD Mackey. The next time somebody saved it, that would go away. But I always thought it was funny in that scenario when it got in.
Caitlin
I
says,
believe CTC has one too.
Caitlin says feels like it's not always accurate.
What's not accurate?
So I had issues with my preview images not being the same that Revit actually shows. For example, my casework always shows the back versus my preview view that is set to in the settings is not to the back. And then Tom agreed. Michael agrees with me. It's just part of your cleanup process to hide the reference planes and the dimensions. And
oh yeah, we do that. So yeah, there are a couple things on that too that I do laugh. And part of the reason why yours might be getting saved backwards, we'll verify this. Let me just go open up some sort of family. Oh, you said furniture or casework. You said so. I'll just go into a casework family. Da, 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 da. Two things about this. One is I always make sure I'm saved to this view, but yes, it can get rotated. I will agree with that. But the one big thing about any of those views when you're in is when I'm done, I right click and I say save this view, and it will save it where it was. And then I also say set this current view as my home. So if I come up here and hit the home key, you're going to see this doesn't move. If I rotate it around, hit the home key, it's going to go back to where it was. The other thing about that is too, is if I closed the view and reopened it, it would come back to where it was because I said save the view. So in my 3D families, I am going to be like, oh, let me rotate this to be right here. Let me get the image I want. I will usually say, hey, let me turn the preview visibility on. Like in this case, you can see that just turned off my locks, whatever. And then I will go right click save view. That has nothing to do with the preview down here. And then I also say set this current view as home. If I do both of those, I will always see the correct image from what I'm seeing on the screen when I hit save. So even if I rotate it, if I rotated it back like, let me get out of that, rotated it back like this, saved it, which I'm not going to, I think I'm in the wrong version of Revit, then I wouldn't see this back view. It would go back to what the saved view is. I think it's the save, not the home, but I go ahead and do both of those. And doing that, I've never had it not save it.
a couple of comments coming in here. Michael says, while you're there, view hierarchy, top, front, right, top, front, left, chaos.
Oh, I don't know what you mean by the chaos of those.
The hierarchy. Caitlin saying, I'm pretty certain I can do that, but maybe I haven't done both save and set. Just redid all my caseworks. Maybe I'll double check those.
Yeah, I actually have a Revit journal file that will go in and open up detail views and turn off the annotation tab, because in my drafting views, I go to clients and I can't even see what it is because the reference planes from out of the box are like 9 feet by 9 feet. They're creating a 1 inch by 1 inch detail component. So I've literally created a Revit journal file that'll go in and turn off reference planes, reference lines, dimensions, etc., and then save it so that I can go to my clients and say, oh, look, here's actually what I needed to see on these detail items.
And Tom added, so load that into your project and use the selector. I'm not quite sure
Oh, so you mean the type selector in a project?
Yeah.
So yeah. So a couple things about this too is you might notice, and I have had people disagree with me on this before as well, that you'll notice that my view cube is saying that this is the back of the object. So I've been doing this for my entire Revit career, that when I come down here for my cabinet, the top side in plan is the front, the bottom side is the back, this is the left, this is the right. And the reason why I have done that is I have realized a long time ago, and my stuff is backwards from the out of the box Autodesk content. If you put one of my chairs in versus Autodesk, it's going to rotate 180 degrees. But the reason why I do this is the legend components. I'm sure you guys have all done this. If you go to place this casework in as a legend component, you say, I want to see the front, you're seeing the back. The reason for it is in plan, this is the front, this is the back, this is the left, this is the right. So out of the box content is not set up that way. And that's why it works like that for me. So if I were to come back in here and look at my casework families, no, they are going to absolutely go down to families, go to my casework, go to any of these. You're going to see that I am seeing that preview towards the front. So yes, that is
what Michael's asking about.
yeah, so that's what I do by the front back. So my stuff is different than the out of the box content. And God forbid you're using the Enscape stuff, which is then rotated 90 degrees, and what should be the right they have as the front. Um, yes, it will come in, but my previews will always be the right because this looks off of it, as well as legend components understand that, oh, what the view cube calls the back and what the out of the box view names were called for the back is in essence the Revit front. So yes, that does become a big thing when we start getting into there and looking at it like that.
Okay. Rick has stair questions. Let's do this one first though. Lock display. Is there a way to show only the lock for the item selected and not everything that has a lock?
No. So what Michael means by that is if I were to come back to a family, go into a reference level or whatever and pick one of the elements in here, and I pick an element, I'm going to see all the different padlocks. That element happens to be a nested component, so there's not going to be a whole lot. Most of my casework is all nested components. But like he's talking about, if you go edit a sketch, you've got 30 lines, all these padlocks show up, and you're like, which one is which? You have no way to know which one is which, unless, and this is a Mackie trick. If you right click on a padlock, you will see that if I right click on a padlock, I've got to actually get the padlock. Let me try that again. And it doesn't matter any padlock. Where did I just get one here? I can right click on this padlock and I get show related, any padlock. And it'll show you, oh, there's a reference plane door. And it's also looking at the nested casework slab door. So this reference plane is connected to that. So any padlock you look at, you can right click on it and say show related, and it will tell you that's the reference plane, that's the element lock to it. So no, you can't visibly see each one of those, but if you're like, oh my God, I got 3,000 freaking over here, right click on this and say show related. And I just got to keep remembering, Harlan said I need to send in this because this is not, it's one of the few non-stretchable dialog boxes, so I can't see everything. I keep forgetting to send this to the Autodesk people. They keep telling me to, and I keep forgetting.
Thomas, how long has that been around? He blew everybody's mind at like RTC 2000.
Yeah, it was RTC
14.
Europe. It was the first RTC Europe.
So that would have been 13.
Yeah, 13. And so in 2013, I showed a padlock. I was in a family at her and it was exact 77. Somebody said, what I was like, what did I align to this? So I hit show relay and everybody's like, hold on, wait, what did you just do? So this has been there forever. Also, if you do it like in the project environment, you will get this. That's not the great project environment, but so if you do it in a project environment, you'll actually get the same thing. So if you go do a dimension.
Don't feel bad if you didn't know it's there. Brian is weird and right clicks on everything and holds down control and hits every button just to see what happens.
But what's really fun is if you were to, I'll just come over here and just go down just a few of these. Sure, that's fine. If you right click on any one of the padlocks here, you'll get the show related, not in the dimension command. You'll get the show related, but if you right click on the equal, you can also get show related, and then it will toggle you through. Oh, look, from that wall to that wall to that wall to that wall. It'll toggle you through all of them in the dimension to string. Padlock will toggle you between individual elements there. So it also works on the dimension string as well. So Tom's never sat in on any of my Revit tips because that's what I always show on my Revit tips.
We have to give Tom crap for not knowing that one.
I like Rick. That's the OCD of his of him and why we like him.
Yeah, but then they'll be like, hey, did you know if you hold down Control Shift and then LP, it'll do well, what? No, why would I know that? Like,
Well, like Control Tab cycles you through your views.
Well, I know
Control Shift
that.
Tab cycles you
I know
backwards.
that one, but like, they'll come up with the one that I remember the most is like the dynamo lining up the nodes. I'm like, no,
Yeah, you
I
select
didn't.
all. I don't know if it's still there because I found this in Dynamo like 4 years ago. You selected all the nodes and hit Control L, it would left align all
Yeah.
of them.
But you're the only person that opens something up and just presses all the buttons to see if it blows up or not. Okay. Tom's usually in the front. You are usually in the front row. Okay, all right, let's do the stairs. So Rick has kind of two questions here. Do I need a separate railing for handrail when guardrail is different length than the handrail, like at a landing? Or am I missing something?
Somebody also sent me a Revit question, a railing question. I was trying to remember if that was done, if I did Revit 24 or 23. I'm gonna hope I did it in 24, but let's look. I probably did not.
And then his second one is balusters and supports. So you're opening stairs.
Nope, it's not that one. So I got to open up Revit 23 to show this. I would upgrade it, but it'll probably go faster to just open up 23. I'm going to go ahead and close Revit 25 because I don't think I'm going to do anything that's new in 25. Cool. So we're waiting for that to open. What's the next question?
Well, Rick has a double stair, and then this one is about raked walls. I recently modeled a house with multiple raked walls and was fighting the wall joints at the corners. Do you have any tips or insight for modeling raked walls? I've tried connecting walls to roofs, adding the wall profile, and no, I don't know what that word is. The rake wall on their own levels with mixed results.
I think it's supposed to say modeling.
Well,
I don't think I've.
well, you know, like if you're cutting, I feel
Yeah.
like it's not. I feel like I haven't had that much.
So it shouldn't. So the one thing I always like to tell people, I'm just going to come in here and draw another wall. Actually, I'm going to do a great similar because I have no idea what wall type this is. The one thing I always like to tell people is if and when you need to get into the edit wall tool. Go to 3D, which I don't have open. So when you are going to edit the profile of a wall, the best thing for Revit to do is never to add. So if you're like, cool, this wall needed to be raked and I needed to take this wall and I needed to bring it up higher here. Don't ever add to a wall, subtract from. Because Revit is going to try to look at everything it's dealing with within that original bounding element of this. So if you truly wanted to be like, cool, I needed to do that, make your wall go up high enough first before you edit that profile, and then make sure that profile comes down underneath what's going on. It's better to make the edit profile a subtractive process than it ever is going to be an additive process, an additive tool. And I always say that because I mean, I know we're in the green world and we want to do additive, additive modeling and 3D printing as opposed to subtractive because it's wasteful. But this is the digital world. Now, there used to be a model that I trained way back when in Revit, and it was always funny. There was an area where the wall went up and over in a second floor. So I'm going to go reset this. Oops, I'm going to reset.
I guess that would be the question too, is if
So like there was like wall here, and I'm just going to make this one. Sure, I'm going to take this one and go up to not unconnected. We're just going to make this sucker. There's only 2 levels in here. Whatever. I'm with a 20-foot offset. And then we'll make this one go up to level 2. Actually, we'll start at level 2 and we'll go unconnect to 12 feet. Cool. So I had a scenario where it was like something like this, but then we wanted to bring this back and over. And whenever somebody would be like, no, I'm going to draw the wall and then like add to it up above or whatever, whenever that process would happen, it would be fail. My wall joins would fail and Revit without question, my wall joins would fail. So if I'm like going to be editing the profile of this, right, I would be coming here. It's like, cool, I needed to do that. And then maybe it was going to come down to here. And usually there was another wall in here. And that's the other thing too. Let me cancel this. Yes. And let me just take this wall and move it like over to here. So it was something like this, where I got a balcony wall above and this coming down here. So there's 2 things that I would always do on this. If I was to edit this profile on a wall like this, then I'm going to pick the wall. But notice how Revit, when you're picking this, it'll pick either face or the center line. So if I'm going to pick the face of the wall, I don't ever pick the face. Revit, when dealing with cleanups, is trying to do the cleanups with the center line of the wall. So picking the center line of that wall is fine. This is one of the rare cases where I actually would constrain things as well, because I want to constrain it. So if this wall moves, it'll move with it. Honest truth, in newer releases, I don't think you even have to. As long as you pick the center of the wall, Revit's going to understand that I needed to go through and set those two up, right? So I'm going to trim this, I'm going to trim this. So again, I'm doing this as a subtractive process, not an additive process. And I'm also going with the center of that wall. So you can see, even though I told Revit to go to the center of that wall, it took care of this cleanup for me. And if I come back in here and move this wall, even though I didn't lock it, you can see Revit's like, oh no, there's a wall join there because you chose the center of that wall. And I understand I need to go there. And again, if I go back and edit the profile, oops, wrong wall.
Tom wants to know if it's linked to the location line.
So it's no, it's not linked to the location line. It's just in Revit, when it does wall cleanups, it looks to the center line of the wall. Doesn't care about location lines. Cleanups look to the center line of the wall. So if I edit the profile on this again, even though it's still cleaning to the front, Revit's understood, hey, I need to go to that wall. And again, if I come back and grab this wall over here, yes, it's set to be wall center line. Probably core center line's a terrible. I'll go say finish face, and I go back and edit the profile of this wall. It's still centered on that wall. It doesn't care about the location line. It just knows Revit does cleanups based off that center point. So if you are dealing with raked walls and you are dealing with things, oftentimes people edit the profiles like, well, this isn't right. Let me go line this to the face of this wall. And they'll like bring it over to the face of the wall. And that's where I start to see Revit have issues with the cleanups. You'll see here, it's like, whoa, what's going on? I'm already getting this. Now I've got this weird, look at the freaky cleanup. I drew the sketch line to this face of the wall and it jumped over there. You always, always, always just want to go to the center line of the walls and Revit will take care of it. And then again, always a subtractive process. So even if you're like, cool, I needed to slope from here or whatever. So from here up, cool, edit the profile, make it taller, slope it from there up, that's fine. Remove those constraints and finish. And then that is where Revit's going to say, cool, I now know what I need to do with my wall joints.
I think the center line is a really key point there with almost all the structural elements. It's a little bit counterintuitive that you do center to center on the walls because you're thinking about the corners or the outsides. So those connections are important. I mean, I'm gently terrified. That's an interesting phrase, Michael. Of how users will. Crazy. Okay. Ever encounter fatal error when too many wall profiles added to a project? Project yellow.
Well, fatal errors happen all the time. Somebody's saying too many fatal error, too many wall profiles. I literally once got into a house that was, or to a building that was modeled by a contractor, and it was an old historic building, and the railings were walls with edited profiles. Everything in the entire dang project was a wall with an edited profile. I was dumbfounded. They had like a 4-foot thick wall, and then they edited the profile to look like stairs. Even the stairs were modeled as a wall with an edited profile. I was like, open this file. I'm like, well, this is weird. This is weird. I went to like VG to turn a wall off. Or I think it was sunglasses. And I said hide category, and the entire file disappeared. I'm like, what the hell? The stairs are gone. I started going and looking. All the handrails were gone. Every single thing was literally a wall with an edited profile. That project did not ever fatal error. I mean, we ended up remodeling everything, but no. So there are many things Revit will cause fatal errors. And would this be one of those things that could contribute to it? Yes, I would assume, but I've never 100% went in and said, cool, let me go through and look at this, entirety to see if that's the reason. I just say, do try to avoid them. But if I had like a brick wall here, I would much rather do this than trying to model this as 4 or 5 separate walls, because then the hatch patterns aren't going to stay aligned, etc. So yes, in a scenario like this, I'm okay with doing this as an edited profile. Making the handrail an edited profile wall, probably not the best thing I would suggest.
We're still on walls here. Rick wants to know, he has a wall where he has the base attached to a sloped roof. That's what I tend to do. Like if I were drawing that, I would have 2 separate walls. The top's attached to the sloped roof and the bottom just has different base definitions, or perhaps the bottom's attached if it makes sense. But
yeah, but when you start having something like a brick wall and you want the hatch patterns to align, you start modeling on 3 separate walls and you're spending your days trying to align hatch patterns.
I don't care about the bricks.
Yes, I know. You're a structural engineer. You care about, hey, here's the sheathing wall supporting the brick. But yeah, you can also, if you had a roof, you could attach this to the top of a roof. I never attach flat walls. Like if this was literally a roof and I attach this to a roof, I would not be attaching this wall, because it pisses me off that when you attach a wall over here, it actually slopes the top of the wall. No one's building a sloped wall top unless it's maybe concrete. But I would never do this wall attached. I would figure out the height this one needed to be, and I would change the height, but I would never attach that one.
I didn't finish reading this. I want the outside layer to be 1 foot above where the base of the wall is attached. Do I need 2 different walls? Can I do this without editing the profile?
So if you're on a slope and you want the sheathing to be independent of that, you're modeling 2 different walls. So if it's flat, you absolutely can come into a flat wall and you can change the properties to move it up or down. So in the properties of any wall, and you go edit your structure and you go turn your section preview on to get your beautiful tools over here. In the section preview, you could come down and say, I want to go modify the layers. If I modify a layer and I pick that thing, that little horizontal line right there. Come on, I'm on modify. Give me the modify. Pick that. Why are you not letting me pick it? There it goes. I get this padlock. If I unpadlock, that gives me the capability to look now at the properties for the base extension distance. We have this for the base. We have this for the top. I can now take that extension distance, add a positive or a negative number in there, and I can make just that one layer go. This is great. This is cool. This looks great. But the second you edit the profile and you'd be like, no, this one was sloping and I wanted to still have that on there. And I say finish, that no longer is there. The base extension or the top extension doesn't work if you have a wall that has an edited, or excuse me, not just a straight edited profile, but if you have a wall that's not horizontal,
So at the bottom of the
profile.
wall is attached. Is there an attachment offset with walls like there are with columns?
No,
Attach it?
no. No, columns have the beautiful offset, but I think what he's saying is when the sheathing come down. That's how I read that. So yes, if you need to show the sheathing is one and the other, then you literally need to model 2 separate walls. And I've actually shown this in some of my like detailing things. Like, cool, if you really wanted to model, I've modeled every single layer of the wall. With that said, one thing you could technically do is you could part a wall. And if you part a wall, you've now got individual layers for all of that stuff. And then you could grab this part. And I don't know if this actually works. Say show shape handles. And now I could be like, cool, I wanted to pull that part up. So I have parted the wall. So now I have a stud part. I have a sheathing part. I have a gypsum part, whatever it would be. Then you can check the show shape handles and you could start moving those up and down. But again, if nobody else in your project knows this and they go to their own individual view or their elevation view, they are not going to see those parts. So you could part out. And then I would also say in beta, they keep talking about adding multi-layer walls where literally every part of a wall acts more like the parts and you can control them all independently. So I'm going to say as of now, those are your options.
Right along that same line, Allison says, should exterior walls be modeled as one or separately with finish as one wall and stud as another? I feel like I'm living my life right
now. That depends on the project itself. So I'm going to go here and open the project that everybody knows that Brian opens all the time because it's a great tiny little file. My little warming hut file. So when we start talking about this, it depends on the project. So I'm in Revit 24. So in this particular project, I always like to open this for that exact reason. So I did model the exterior finishes independent of the interior finishes on this little project when it opens. And the reason why I did that is originally when they were coming in here and trying to set this up, they were going to say that, oh, gee, the brick or the stone in this case was going to go into individual areas. Actually, you know what? I'm going to cut it this other way. So when we start looking at this thing here and I select the wall I have here is the interior is all there. So I've got the wall here. I've got a different material above and below, but this is all one single wall. It's not a stacked wall. It's a vertically compound wall with sweeps, but I have the wall in here and this is a structural insulated panel wall. But then on the outside, I knew 2 reasons why these are modeled separately. This was going to be a different thickness than this, which was probably going to be a different thickness than this one up here as well. So I had these different materials going on inside of there. The other reason, thickness materials. The other reason is originally, I believe all of these walls here had went up higher. I think they came back and changed their mind. I think these were all going to be like 5 or 6 feet or something like this. So when we looked at it, those were all going to be set up in this scenario. So originally, hey, it's not going to be the same height all the way around the building. That's the other reason why I did it. But if it was going to be like, man, you're going to do the same thickness material all the way around and it's going to always be consistent, I'd model them as part of the wall. The advantage of not modeling them as part of the walls, I could come down here and be like, oh, you know what? This base offset, we had a slope right here, so I wanted to pull that down a foot. I probably should have said go up to level 1 with a 4-foot offset as opposed to unconnected at 4 feet, so it would have remained. But then I could come down here in this case, like, cool, let me go edit the profile of this. Let me pull this down and then let me finish it. So now I can make, hey, the stone is going to overlap the wood. It's going to overlap the concrete. That's cool. That's just what we're going to do. We can start getting into those scenarios. The other thing, if they are modeled as independent walls, technically what I could do is I could attach one wall to another. So I can attach this wall. I'm going to attach its base to this other wall. So people know you can attach walls to roofs. Some people know you can attach it to reference planes. I see very few people attach them to other walls. So again, if I were to grab this one and attach its base to this wall, boom. Now I could come over here and be like, oh, but the height of this one was actually only going to be, or wanted to be 5 feet, and the wall above is moving with it. All right, same thing here. Oh, let me grab this one and say it should have been 5 feet as well, and the wall above goes with it. So you can attach walls, so you can even make that life a little bit easier as you start moving things up and down. The other walls will go up and down to the right as well.
Pretty much any intersecting element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Attach maybe the bottom of a beam, I bet.
Nope, can't attach walls to beams.
Mm.
And what Desiree mentioned earlier is when you attach structural columns to things, it really, really, really pisses me off. Yeah, it's a structural column that they give you a.
I use that all the time.
That's not attached. So let me grab this one. If I attach this to the beam, the attachment on structural columns actually give you an offset. Because you'd be like, no, I wanted to come down 6 inches. So if I come down 6 inches and attach it to this beam, it's gonna, it needs to be negative. But you can see it went up 6 inches from that beam. But I can come down and be like, oh, that should have been a negative 6 inches. We do not get this with walls, which just pisses me off. I really wanted that to have the capability. Did I attach it to the beam above or something? Because now it's not even given to me. But anyway, it should be working. Oh, I did the wrong one. That was base offset 0 down here. I'm like, why did that not move? So you get a base, you get an attachment down here to be like, no, cool. I wanted to move that. So even if the height of this beam moves up or down, then the whole entire thing is going to go with it. Where's the offset? So I go to move this down 1 foot. That column is going to go with it, but stay 6 inches. We don't get that for walls. Drives me crazy. Cool. So should we jump into the
ready for stairs now?
Stairs.
Okay. Do I need a separate railing for handrail when guardrail is different length, like at a landing?
I almost always make my guardrails and my handrails independent. So I have a handrail, I have a guardrail, because 90% of the time you can be like, oh, well, the guardrail's got to come over here and block the landing or whatever. So yes, for me, I almost always be like, cool, there's my guardrail. It needs to come over to, it's going to come over here on this landing to here, and then I have a guardrail that's going to do that. But I just want to then take my handrail and do something else with it. The other reason in reality is oftentimes like, well, did I really need the handrail on here? I don't. So again, I'm going to, copy that to the clipboard, and I'm going to edit the path of this one and be like, cool, these lines should all go away, and finish that. And then I'm going to go in and say, cool, paste same place. And I'm going to edit the path of this handrail. I got a delay going on again, and delete these lines and finish it. And so now, yes, my guardrail's going up to landing, and then I've got a handrail with no handrail down here in the intermediate landing. So yes, my handrails are almost always independent of my guardrails. None of my I have a guardrail family that has one on it just for preliminary schematic design to throw one in there. But in reality, my handrails and guardrails are almost always independent.
Next stair question. Making balusters out of supports. The supports only work with handrails, right? So do you make the handrail just one of the rails of the railing? Do you typically use the highest railing?
Yes. So looking at this, to answer that question, it's also, we'll go into Tim R had a question, which we're going to pull out that he asked me earlier. So when I come in here and look at this handrail, right, we're going to go back and look at this one first. So if I were to look at this, I can't grab these supports or these balusters. But if I come over here, I can tab select and get a baluster. And if I unpin it, I can start moving it around. Because technically, this is not a baluster. This is a support, right? So if I go in and edit the structure of this railing and I start looking at this railing I have a top rail and I also have a handrail. I could have done the top rail as this, but I did do this different for a couple of reasons. Here on the top rail, I've got a top rail that's going to extend down to the floor. So I have this top rail extending to the floor. I'm going to untick that for a second just so it turns off. But what you'll see is I have a little 16th by 16th inch profile that's my handrail that I've used to embed this into. So yes, if I go cut a section in here, I see this tiny little 16th inch square in the middle of my railing sections. I personally don't care. It looks like a dot when I print it, but that's what I'm using for this, because the difference is a handrail can have supports, a top rail cannot. So I could have made the handrail go in and do this, but it just, in my mind, it worked easier to go through and do this because I can also edit the top rail, but I can't edit a handrail independently. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So yes, if I tab select to get this, this is the baluster, but what it's actually doing is that support, air quotes there, that support is actually part of this handrail. So I basically am saying, cool, on this handrail, use my little 16th by 16th inch profile to take it to the top. Here's the height I need that to be. This is the other reason why I like it. I could play with the height of this to pull down where I want these supports to start and stop. Independent, I still got that 16th by 16th, but if I want to I can make it come down the 4 inches to this one or something. Right, then I come down here and say, cool, let's go ahead and use these supports as well. So I can say use these supports. So again, I can do one or the other. So yes, my supports can. Downside of this is the supports that I'm using as a handrail. If I were to come in here and be like, cool, I want to go through here and edit this, and I wanted that top rail to be 48 inches, not 3 feet inches, and I hit apply, that top rail goes up, not this handrail. This is the reason why I did this and made it a little bit more deliberate. Because if I then were to come in here and edit this one, this is a different value. Again, I'll go say 47.5 inches. This is a different value when I look at this, but these are not, the balusters are not automatically, sorry, the supports as balusters are not automatically going to lengthen. We then would have to go create a new support that was going to be the 48 inches tall, not the 42 inches tall. So you do have to do that, which is why I like making those independent, so I can control them different. But yes, I could have just done this as part of the handrail and done it that way.
So is that drop on the end on the top rail an extension or a termination?
It is an extension. And so here's the really, really stupid, I'll do one more time. Here's the really, really stupid part about Revit is when you have a top rail and you go to its properties, you can tell Revit, I want to extend it to the floor, wall, or post, right? Floor, wall, or none. Yeah, post, floor, or wall. But if you say go extend it to the floor and you have no extension on it, absolutely nothing happens. So your extension, you have to have an extension in order for that to work. If my extension is too small for the fillet I have up here, it also doesn't work. Yep, can't do that. Right? So hence why I had both of these at 1.5 inches. Go back and make both these my 1.5 inches. Oops, that is not the inch mark. Right, hit apply. Now I can get that to come down. But here's the really stupid part. If you tab select to get that top rail, you can go edit the rail. I can delete that little 1.5 inch section here. Once I go say I want to edit the path, I'm going to edit my path. So I've edited the top rail, and I'm going to edit the path. I can delete that little section, and then I can take this line and move it over and say finish. I must have moved it wrong. And do the move. Let me say move from here over 1.5 inches, finish, and then finish, and it will do it. So it won't let me build that 1.5 inches into it, but I can delete it out after the fact. It's really stupid. But yes, that was part of the top rail. That is an extension to go down to the floor. So the other things I have, so like on this one, this is using that very similar top rail, but it does have a termination to give me my little escutcheon plates on the ground. Or the same thing for this one over here. I have a top rail with an escutcheon on each side, and then this one is a handrail with a termination to represent my escutcheon on each side as well. Again, not like I'm ever worried about modeling these, but you could.
They have no more questions for us. They're tired of us.
They're tired of us. It's okay. I have one more from Tim. So Tim did ask another railing question. Tim was like, oh, my team has told me that they have to use Rhino inside of Revit to get this handrail. Well, they were wrong. So one of the things about this is when you start looking at this handrail, when I go look at it, advantage of a handrail over a top rail is a handrail can be on the left side, the right side, or both sides. So I have this handrail that is literally just this little plate extension, and I had to go to the left and the right. So now that handrail came around to the left and the right. So now I've got it on both sides. If I select this and I just go back and say reset railing, yes, remove my constraints, that I did come in here and put supports in there, and I just told this railing to give me 2 supports. So the other benefit of a rail when you're giving it supports, no, I don't want the stair. Rotate a little bit. Tab select. I don't want to stop getting the stair. Handrail tight, flat rail. When you look at the supports inside of here, so when you're giving it supports, you can say, give me a fixed number, fixed distance, align with posts, maximum spacing. I just said, give me a fixed number of 2. So when it does that, it gave me the fixed number of 2, and then I could tab select this, unpin it, and then I could start moving it where I needed to move it. One thing that's great about supports is if you move them, they will move along the slope of the rail. So even though I'm just arrowing it over, it's doing it. So I did come over here and play with this to align it, and I did it in a section, but I could get that to align. Also, supports can have instance-based properties. So I had one support, and if I look at this one versus this one, the downside of doing it left and right, you'll see that I'm 0, 90, 0, and 31. But if I tab select to get to this one, it's 90, 0, 31, and 0. So it did, going it from left to right, these supports did get mirrored in essence. So I did have to play with what was going on with the lefts and the rights. But I was able to unpin it, move it. I'm going to go and do all of that. I was able to unpin it, use the align tool to start coming in. How many times did I nudge it? And go through and get it in there. So yes, one rail to do what they were saying they had to do with Rhino inside of Revit or a custom in place family. So you can do that.
More stairs. Half treads at landings of stairs? Ask Michael.
One second. So the other thing, and this came up from, I didn't even see if he's here, but this came up a long time ago. Again, so this is my spiral barbed wire handrail, and if I tab select, you'll see that a spiral is literally just a support. So I made a support that was that. I told it to repeat that support every 6, 8 inches, however big I made that spiral. I don't remember. And so that support got repeated to come across. So again, you have lots of options with those supports. My bar rail, which I was actually looking at the hotel we're staying at, they have this very similar bar rail at the hotel bar. But again, all of these, if I tab select, are literally just supports going through and doing it. So have that capability to do it. Okay, so what was Michael's?
Half treads at landings of stairs? Question mark.
Half treads at landings? At every? I don't know why you only at the landing.
Someday a contractor is going to get a model from Brian and everything is going to be a railing.
Better than all edited profile walls.
Or all in place model. We don't know what you mean on your half tread.
I don't know what you mean by half treads only on landings, Michael.
I feel like you're just speaking a whole different language with all these stair terms.
So the one thing I would say is if you were like, cool, I've got open tread, or I only wanted the tread to come up a certain distance, or the riser, excuse me, to come up underneath that tread a certain distance. The one thing I would say is if you were going to do that, you could do something similar to what I have over here, where these little stripes are also a railing. So my little reflector strip at the beginning, I normally would have just built this into the railing, or excuse me, into the run profile for the riser, but this client's like, no, I need it to stop 2 inches on each side. That is also a railing, because in the railings, when you look at a baluster, one of the options you have for balusters is down here to say, I want one, where is it down here? Sorry. I want treads on balusters. How many balusters per tread do you want? And then what family do you want to use? So I'm saying, give me one tread or one baluster per tread. And I gave the one that's a horizontal baluster. This truly is a baluster family, not a support. And I was able to get it to go through and set that up.
It says landing specifically because they're a pain in the ass to deal with. Auto railings and top of run is also problematic. I don't know if that helps.
No, that doesn't. Yeah, no.
Maybe we can let them talk.
Yeah. So, and then the only other thing on that I was going to finish on, we do have 4 minutes left, but So that railing, or excuse me, that railing there turned into, for a different client, this railing where now the carpeted finish is truly a baluster per tread. It's literally the same family I had over there. I just changed its height and depth, and that's all parametric as well. So kind of the same scenario that, yeah, you can get into there and do that.
Another aspect of railing elements that is so stupid is materials for posts. You have to go into the post family and the extrusion to assign a material to it. Posts do not support phasing.
Oh, but yes, you're correct. Posts do not. But guess what does kind of support phasing? Your So this one has been manually placed. So this is also a railing, sorry, not a baluster. This is a railing support. It does pick up on, excuse me, if it's part of a railing, it picks up on phases. But if you manually place one, there's no phase property for it. But any of these supports inside of here will have a phasing property, but the phasing property of it gets picked up by the handrail. These do not have phasing. So if you manually place any of these, there's a few elements in Revit, it's like, yeah, I don't have a phase. So they do if they're, sorry, balusters, ugh, supports do if they're part of the railing, but they do not if they're placed individually.
Like certain wall doors.
Curtain
the
wall.
double- Oh,
Curtain wall
wow.
doors.
Dyslexia much? The double. Yep. Yep, I think you got it. I don't know.
I wasn't sure about answering all of Michael's on
He
me.
said he's not a fan of auto railings versus users learning to use them, but a lot of users want it to work. If that helps you.
I have majority of the time been able to get railings to succeed where my clients need them to. Are they easy? No. And just to put in perspective, Tim asked me this question. I'm like, yeah, that'd be super easy. That took me 2 hours to figure out. But it wasn't the actual railing. The railing itself took a while. It was simple. It was more getting the supports as the balusters to do what I wanted them to do and understand what was going on. And this isn't even anywhere it needed to be. I know Tim needed like a giant radius on this down here. I wasn't going to play with that to start with. Because the nice part about my thing here is if I change it from 0 over here, I could actually get that to be straight and straight. So I had a support that allowed that to be 0. If I added a radius to that, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So it would have been a little bit more complicated getting that to happen.
Great help.
So not exactly what he needed, but got you pretty dang close.
He gave you a clapping hand.
Well, and we are, wow, it's the first time like I've ended Revit Radio right on time in a very long time. Because you came back and got me in action. Would have been done 10 minutes early had you stuck around the whole time. Well, with that said, we are at the top of the hour, so we will be done with this. I will take this recording and get it posted to my YouTube channel. I don't think I posted last month, so I got to get into that as well. So, and hopefully I answered everyone's questions and you guys came out with some sort of tip. And again, the padlock always wins.
The padlock does always win. Is your next one conflicting with 4th of July?
Well, that was we were going to ask. So the next Revit Radio, and I am going to leave it for now, but the next Revit Radio theoretically is it's on the 2nd, but it is before 4th of July. So I don't think too many people are going to have issues with that. So hopefully we're going to keep it on that. I figure most people are going to take the Friday off and we should be okay. But just to let everybody know, we are still planning on doing it as a good celebration to get you out of for fireworks.
Rick says happy birthday.
And thanks for all the birthday wishes.
All right.
And thanks everyone. We will see you next month.
I think that's right out on this.